And we are live today on what does Sohel always say? On another exciting adventure of Starfleet Boy or something like that. His patented introduction that he does.
Oh yeah.
We're just gonna wait and see if we get anyone checking us out before. Oh, speak of the devil. Look who was the first in the comments.
Hey, Starfleet boy.
Gotta chug down some Red Bull before we get started.
Oh, comments. We're getting all high tech with this.
Yeah, well, I have our opening credits that work now, so well, I'm just going to go ahead and kick things off. All right, 3 people watching. Let's do this. I'm Fatheree.
This is Brian.
And I'm PJ.
And this is Tex-Trek.
Engage.
I'm sorry, I muted my mic.
You're good. Welcome back aboard the Starship Texas for the 110th installment of the Tex-Trek podcast, the home of Star Trek fandom from deep in the heart of Texas, where we talk all about Star Trek all the time. And we are here to, again, talk about Star Trek Lower Decks. The second episode, Envoys, written by Chris Kula and directed by Kim Arndt. And Dave is unfortunately unable to join us today, but that's okay. We have our good friend PJ here with us.
Hello.
And Brian, our frequent guest, has returned.
Hello. Good to be here.
And we're just going to start things off by giving an opening statement on how we feel about this episode, the second episode of Star Trek Lower Decks. So, Brian, you want to kick things off?
Yeah. I guess the good is I found this one way funnier. I laughed a lot. I laughed hard. I really laughed a lot in this episode. I'm still not sure if the heart of Star Trek is actually being represented in this show, but I find it a lot harder to object when I spent 20-something minutes having such a good time and laughing so hard. So,
yeah, for me, I liked this the same or maybe a little bit more than I did last week. But, I was already on board with this after the end of that first episode. I don't think I laughed as hard as I did last week, but I think I laughed more. There were just like more funnier moments in here that landed with me. And I'm still seeing more and more of how there is kind of some Star Trek elements that I love that have been kind of missing from some of the more recent things like Discovery or Picard. And I like those shows, but Lower Decks is fulfilling in a little bit of a different way. Like this episode in particular kind of focused in on some of that like old school, very TNG-ish wholesomeness that felt very familiar and also very fresh because I don't think we've gotten a lot of that lately. And I love how they so lovingly use the existing universe and the existing continuity And it just makes this feel, as weird as it is to do an animated comedy in Star Trek, it just makes it feel so much more familiar. There were still maybe like 2 or 3 little things in this episode that kind of bothered me, that kind of rubbed me the wrong way, but overall I was able to overlook them. I'll point them out when we get to them in our discussion. But for the most part, I'm still having a lot of fun with this. PJ, what about you?
I thought the A plot with Mariner and Boimler on the planet was fine. The Klingons just really turned out to be just a cheap joke, and I like seeing all the aliens down there and stuff. But the main thing that really sold me on this episode was the Rutherford storyline and jumping from different departments, and how everybody's so enthusiastic for him to try what he wants, and especially the holodeck scene, which we'll talk about. But yeah, probably the first time I laughed out loud, which I really didn't in the first episode, but this one I'm kind of sold. So yeah, a little bit funnier, but almost on par in a lot of ways to the first episode.
Yeah, I think the funniest thing last week for me was that spider cow suckling Boimler. I don't think anything this go around made me laugh that hard, but I did find myself laughing more often, which is a good sign.
I just felt sorry for the guy. I wasn't laughing. She's just standing there making jokes as this happens to him.
I didn't look at it as seriously as I think you did. After you pointed out your observations last week, it made me kind of reevaluate that. But at the time, those thoughts had not occurred to me. But let's just go ahead and dive right into this. I'm just going to share the synopsis from Memory Alpha, and then I'll go ahead and expand on it with some spoilers to summarize this episode. But after a high-profile mission goes awry, Boimler is further plagued with self-doubt when Mariner proves herself to be more naturally talented sci-fi badass than he. Rutherford quits his job in engineering and explores other departments on the USS Cerritos. And just to expand on that with spoilers, Boims and Mariner take a Klingon diplomat to a planet. He gets drunk and runs off in their shuttlecraft. They have to find him to get him back and get him to the peace talks in time. And that's pretty much all that happens here. And I'm going to pull up some images here for those of you watching live with us. And the first thing I want to talk about in Envoys is that opening teaser before the credits. When the energy beam comes on board the ship.
Yes.
Both last week and this week, my least favorite part of the episode was the opening teaser before the credits.
I guess, see, I appreciated that the rapey glowy thing gets its ass handed to it by one of the women, and that kind of seems to balance things out from the child a bit. The TNG episode where something similar seems to be, at least it looks like it's headed that way to begin with. So I don't know if it was necessarily funny, but I did feel like there was some sort of karmic justice going on there. So. Also, the tricorder with the purple stripe was hilarious. I laughed at that. That was very fun.
Is that something you would wish for if you captured a transdimensional energy being?
I suppose, yes. If I was only allowed to wish for Starfleet equipment, I'd probably go for the tricorder. And sure, why not the one with the purple stripe? So now I want to see some real life renditions of that from Star Trek fans who do the props and stuff, who make a actual one of those. So that was great. I like the purple tricorder.
My problem with this is I just thought it was a little silly that this thing thinks it's all powerful, and then it's so easily subdued by being shoved into a canister, and then it basically it's like, oh, I'll grant you a wish like a genie, which is kind of funny, but then it's like, why don't you just like run away instead of like depleting all your energy making the tricorder? So it was just a little too silly, a little too cartoony for me, but it didn't have any bearing on the rest of the episode. So, PJ, what did you think about it?
Yeah, I don't really like these cold opens, these little stingers. They're probably never gonna have anything to do with the rest of the episode. But this one in particular, like the first one, wasn't all that interesting. I didn't. Yeah, like you said, this all-powerful thing is so easily subdued, and it goes into the captain at the end. I thought that was gonna turn into something, but I guess it just died.
Yeah, it looks like it like went into her, and like I thought it was gonna like possess her, and I was kind of disappointed because like I don't want to deal with like a captain possession episode. I want to focus on these lower deck people that like I got to know last week that I'm really starting to like. But yeah, that's not the case. So unless they're like setting that up for something later, that was my first impression was like, oh, I guess it's gonna like possess the captain, and then I watched it again, and I thought, oh, I guess it just like died because it was so weak for making that tricorder. That I'm unsure, but
I think they should have thrown in a line about about those being magnetic constrictor cylinders or something, and that's what's draining it for. That's why she's able to drain its energy or force it. Just a quick line or two of technobabble would have gone a long ways to justifying why a making her look really smart. She knows that she has just the right equipment to deal with this, and B would have given all of us nerd boys a bit more rationalization to it. I did actually think, oh, she just killed it. Apparently walking into the captain was the final blow, and now it's dead. So
but enough with the opening teaser. Let's go ahead and talk about the A story of the episode, which is Boimler is given a mission, and he's all excited because he's going to escort a diplomat to a peace talk conference at a starbase.
Yep.
I like the Starfleet tread on the boots. When Mariner has her feet up on the desk, and you can see she's got little Starfleet insignia on the boots, and presumably everyone's boots look like that. That's a nice touch.
Yeah, that's good branding from CBS. I think they love to put that Delta on everything in these newer shows. It's funny though, because I was watching Charlie X with Starfleet Boy recently, because he does a weekly live show on YouTube on Saturdays to talk about original series episodes. And in Charlie X, you see that Delta on like everything. It's on like the shirt that they give Charlie to wear. It's on like their workout clothes that they use when they're in the rec room. So it's kind of an old tradition actually to just brand that Delta everywhere.
Yeah.
But this is where you see Boimler, like he really like dials up this bravado and kind of like the self-importance that he's always trying to present. And I just want to like point that out here because I think it kind of circles around to something I want to bring up at the end of the episode. But I love that moment when he goes onto the shuttle and Mariner is there. He's disappointed to learn that she's going to be joining him. And then when the Klingon Kaorin actually comes on board, and you have like that crazy moment where Mariner is like,
yeah, a lot of what Mariner had said and done earlier made more sense when she knew this Klingon as a buddy from the moment the name came up. So that kind of inflects how you view the scene where in the shuttle bay or the shuttle repair room, whatever that was, where they talk about where Boimler's all, I've got this new assignment, and it's kind of fun to go back and watch that scene, knowing that she knows exactly who this is and all of that.
Yeah, and they're also making fun of the name Kaorin, or I think that's how you say it, but how all Klingon names. How do you say it, PJ?
Corinne.
Corinne?
That's the way it sounded to me.
All Klingon names kind of sound the same. They all have like a K and an apostrophe.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if that was moving into sort of problematic territory or not, but I said, well, whatever. We often treat the real aliens on Star Trek slightly different than we treat different races on Earth. So,
yeah, the joke about how she's like she knows him from the Grey Ops from back in the day, and he's like, we're the same age back in what day? It's like,
yeah.
Where are you getting all of this experience? How old are you, really?
I wonder if that's going to get expanded upon, if that's supposed to be a clue of some big iceberg worth of information, or if it's just a silly joke.
And later in this episode, he asks her like how do you know all this stuff? And she's like, I've just been around. I learn things. I pick up on things. And I'm wondering if there actually is. Oh, well, we know there's more to Mariner's backstory than what we've been told. You know, they set up that hook in the first episode with her captain mom and admiral dad. Like, so I don't know if she like grew up on a starship and she was exposed to a lot of stuff early on. Maybe that's what she meant last week when she said, I've been on 5 different starships.
I suppose that would help if she grew up on a starship. I hadn't thought about that, but that would go a long ways to explaining some of this stuff. And given her parents would make a lot of sense.
I'm continuing to really like her as a character. Just she seems to have like the most fun. And I like the idea of like fighting and drinking with this Klingon, even though he does get like a little carried away, and I wouldn't want to hang out with him regularly, but maybe like every now and then he might be an occasional fun drinking buddy.
It was this scene here in the shuttle, which had me going, oh my, she's just Jadzia Dax on speed.
Yeah.
So,
there's more of that too, but yeah, like in this episode, we see her have like these this friendship with a Klingon in a very Dax type way, and also with a Ferengi later in a very Dax type way.
Yes. And once I cottoned on to that, I was like, okay, she is really just, maybe she has a trill. I mean, they could put trills in humans, so, or symbiotes in humans, so maybe that's what's going on here.
And when they arrive at the starbase, he's already drunk by this point. I'm fairly certain that General Corinne has a problem and really needs help. I kind of wish they like dropped him off at rehab at the end of the episode. But,
to be fair, excessive Klingon drinking has been a running thing in Star Trek for quite a while.
Yeah, no, I know that we've seen like Klingon drunkards before.
Why isn't she as drunk, or why is she so sober when she gets out?
Because he started earlier than she did. He was already half lit when he walked into the shuttle bay.
No, that would make some sort of sense.
But then he commits grand theft shuttlecraft and runs off with their shuttlecraft.
So, and here we get to see, actually, I like this part because Boimler was right. They shouldn't have stopped. They should have just taken him where they were supposed to go.
Yes.
And I was like, nice to see that he was actually not just the one who's always making the wrong choices all the time or trying to make the wrong choices. So yeah, that was a nice. I'll talk more about that. Circle back around to that when we get to the end. But yeah, I like the fact that was there, even if it wasn't necessarily highlighted, but it was certainly laid out.
Right here, he's power walking and saying that this is what people in Section 31 do.
Yeah, it was really weird to like establish that Section 31 is like public knowledge again. It was like public knowledge in the time of Discovery, then it was a secret. No, wait. It starts with Enterprise. It was a secret during Enterprise.
Yeah.
And it was public knowledge during the time of Discovery. Then it was a secret again until some time after DS9, and at some point within the span of years between the end of DS9 and the beginning of Lower Decks, it became public knowledge again.
Yeah. I also found it a little worrying that he's appears to be mildly idolizing Section 31. I want to do things the Section 31 way. I was like, really? Ooh, okay.
Yeah, I'm interpreting it as it's just kind of like a rumored shadow group that may or may not exist, and people don't really know much. It's kind of like
the Bigfoot video that they have, the Bigfoot walking through the woods, and that's the only thing we've got is this Section 31 agent walking, and they do the power walking, so that's why he's.
You know what I think actually happened with this joke, though? I'm wondering if it was originally something like they do this in the Tal Shiar or something. Like, because it's kind of like in real life, you might have somebody point out like, oh yeah, like this is like actually like a top secret CIA technique or something. And I'm wondering if like Alex Kurtzman was like, no, you should make it be Section 31 instead, because we want to like really establish Section 31 as something and like the new Trek shows and stuff, kind of like build that up.
I would say that seems like a silly conspiracy theory, but it's Section 31, so we should lean into the conspiracies. Yeah.
But also in this like landing on the planet, what I thought was great was they do give us a moment here where Boimler is right and Mariner is wrong, like you were saying. Yes. And also like he knew something she didn't know, in that he had read the briefing and he knew about the ion field that was going to keep them from beaming up or hailing the ship. And I also thought that was very good from like kind of a technobabble type of standpoint, because otherwise we would be doing this podcast tonight and Brian would be saying, why don't they just beam back up to the ship?
I didn't understand. Is the communications jamming field a natural part of the planet, or was it something that's a deliberate security system?
It's kind of ambiguous. I don't know. PJ, what did you think?
I think it's where it's such a diverse place. They want to keep people from beaming out in and out randomly, and they probably want to control the communication.
I can totally
security.
Yeah, I can see the transporter thing, and I actually had the same thought as you, that they're kind of wanting to keep they don't want people jumping between zones too easily, but the communication thing just felt weird to me. Why would they deliberately jam communications? And yeah, I don't know, but at least they hung a lantern on it, as they say in the writer circles, and explained exactly why they can't call the ship for help, even if it kind of just punted the mystery a little further down the street.
But this the starbase of Tulgana 4, it's kind of divided up in these different districts. And we kind of go through them one by one. There's a Klingon district next to the Ryzen kind of red light sex district. And then like the Andorian district. It's actually
called Little Kronos.
Yes. And the sign going into Little Kronos, it actually says like Little Kronos in the correct Klingon spelling.
Nice. I do like what it says about Earth or Federation Klingon relations, that the Federation starbase has a little Kronos. That is a kind of a interesting. That says something about their relations of the two governments. A nice thing, I think.
And speaking of like the Klingon lettering, the Gok. Am I saying Gok? I never know how to say that. The worms, worm food, the Gok lady, the little Gok cart.
Yeah,
there's a sign above it that says Gok in the correct spelling. So I've been told. I can't verify that, but that's what I heard. Murray and Ghostbusters. That's what I heard.
It was a good choice to bring Gok into the cartoon. It's a very animate food for an animated series.
And how cool is it to see like these very familiar looking Klingons, like the Klingons that most of us picture when we think of Klingon? I know we got like that one picture that someone pulled off of Trek Core, put in the first episode of Picard, of like Gowron and Worf.
Oh, yes.
But this is like new content with the old Klingons that is really, really, really just, I don't know. It feels, it's more than like nostalgia, but it feels like a return to form. But the whole like little journey through like the Klingon district, they kind of start establishing early on that Boimler is like in like way over his head. They bump into this big blue guy called a Taxor that Boimler tries to talk to in his guttural language, and he ends up saying, I believe, female feces outside inside feces, which is the wrong thing to say to a Taxor.
Yeah, I did cross my mind why the universal translator wasn't able to handle what was clearly a verbal language, but
Well, he said he deliberately tried to do it. He says, I have to apologize in his native language. Like,
yeah.
he was trying to. I mean, maybe that was just like the custom to like apologize to these people, or like he was trying to go the extra mile and couldn't pull it off, or something like that.
Maybe in the book it actually says they respect somebody who can speak their language without using a universal translator. So maybe that's why he was going that route. Is it's actually in the book that works if you say the right thing. If you say the wrong thing, it probably doesn't.
But I think it's really clever how Mariner does that thing like you can do with like a dog, where like you act like you throw something, but you actually like keep it in your hand, and it confuses them. Because like not only does she do that with his wallet here, but it also like confused me as an audience member. I had to go back and like rewatch it later to she actually pocketed the wallet, and his reaction of like, oh man, my dad's going to kill me when he can't find his wallet. Like, for whatever reason,
I like the way he says it. He's like flabagabba or something.
I have to admit, I was like, what? I didn't catch the thievery at all the first time, and not even really the second until she pulls out the money in the bar in the later scene. And then I was like, oh, good grief, she robbed that guy. Mariner robbed that guy. Okay, Mariner.
But to be fair, like it came in handy later. Like,
so yeah, that was one more thing to file into what I know about Mariner. She will rob somebody if she gets the chance. So,
and we get another example of, I think, the show doing a good job of using the universe, using the pre-existing continuity when we get to the Ryzen District.
Yeah. Did they get the architecture right? I don't remember enough about the buildings. They were probably all just kind of repurposed sets that they had lying around, I suppose, in that era. But
yeah, I haven't gone back and checked out any of that old architecture that we saw on Next Generation or Deep Space Nine when we visited Ryza then.
All right. The color scheme is certainly a popular one for Next Generation, and certainly you throw some palm trees and some Horgon around, and it reads as Ryza just fine. But
they kind of reuse kind of an old trope. You see it in a lot of science fiction stuff of like the sexy alien chick trying to seduce you is actually like gonna use you for some nefarious purpose. I guess that's older than what we think of as like modern sci-fi, but we have the Anabaj character, which was a new addition to the lore. She wants to implant eggs in Boimler's throat.
So yeah, I mean, one could read that as, oh look, loose women are evil, but I don't know if we should be thinking about it that hard. So
PJ, what did you think of the Anabaj?
Yeah, I definitely never heard of that race before, so I guess they're
That's
completely new. Yeah, so yeah, I knew there was something up.
Speaking of that,
reminded me of Jurassic Park.
How Jurassic Park?
You know that scene with Newman and that dinosaur
with the big fins.
Oh, the Dilophosaurus, yeah. When her like neck fins pop out.
Yeah. I will say I did love the way this scene, the whole sequence with the what did you call her? The species Anabaj. The way the sequence with the Anabaj played out was hilarious. Beat for beat, it would just joke on top of joke on top of joke, and most of them landing very solidly. Like Mariner has dated one, and then dated one to upset her parents, and the way it spread its fins, the way it scampered up the wall like some sort of gecko. It was
the hose getting sprayed on it.
Yeah, the hose, just which was such an absurd way to deal with aliens in Star Trek, is spray it with a hose. I couldn't stop laughing at the whole piece.
The telepathy when she's like, he still wants Jamaharon. I know his dirty boy thoughts.
Well, I like how even after she's monstered out, he's like, you still actually are thinking about how hot it would have been to do it.
Right.
That was nice. I was like, wow, that was very funny that he's apparently still kind of thinking, well, I could still maybe, why,
I'm going to ask y'all something. But when you were watching this, did either of you know what a sarong is? Apparently, that's like that.
Yeah, I
thing.
didn't catch the joke till the second time through, but yeah, that was another one. I was like, nice sarong. I was like, hey, that's great.
I never had to Google that word. I didn't know what that was.
Oh yeah, I picked it up somewhere. So
I was like, that's why we need to have a lady back on Tex-Trek who might know some of the stuff that I don't know about wardrobe stuff. And then after the Ryzen District, we get the Andorian District, which I'm starting to feel sorry for the Tellarites, because used to the original series, the unspoken rule is anytime you see an Andorian, you see a Tellarite. But the Andorians have just gotten so much more representation over the years than the Tellarites. What's up with that?
Maybe they're afraid to show the Discovery style Tellarites.
Well, they're not doing the Discovery style Andorians.
That's good.
These look more. These don't look like the Enterprise ones either. These look more like the original series.
Yeah. I think the Andorians are just more photogenic, I think. And plus, they did space pigs last week.
Yeah, they had the purple piggies last week. But this is my favorite moment, and it is such a fanboyish, fan servicey, just nerd.
I knew this was going to be your favorite moment. That's the first thing that came to my mind when I saw it. Was Fatheree was probably jumping off up and down on the when he saw that.
PJ, you know what I'm talking about, though, right? The Vandorian.
Vandorian, yeah.
Yeah.
And
I got to know, did you get up out of your chair and jump up and down, Fatheree?
I didn't, but I did I was watching it with Antonia, my girlfriend, and I did yell. I was like, it's a Vandorian! That's from the animated series.
I laughed when he said, I'm a little kid now, and he ran out the window.
Oh, yeah, that's funny. That's another thing where, beat for beat, it was hilarious, where you see it transform, and then he just, crawls up the window. I'm a little boy now, and just runs out the window.
I actually have a Vandorian in my causing problems for my characters in my Star Trek role-playing game right now, so that was cool.
But yeah, Boimler messes up there when, he's trying to be good, proactive Starfleet officer. He's trying to he thinks he's going to stop this old man from getting beat up, and instead he allows a Vandorian thief to escape and starts a bar fight. A very common Star Trek tradition is having bar fights.
Are we supposed to assume that Mariner knew it was a Vandorian, or was she just kind of don't get involved in other people's business when you've got a mission to do?
I think that something tipped her off. Either Andorians never wear shoes that look like that, or I think she saw something suspicious.
Okay.
So. I don't know if y'all noticed, but there's also bongs in this bar that they're in.
Is that for the what is it? Rafi smokes.
Oh, the snake leaf?
Oh.
Yes. Is that for the snake leaf?
Or an attempt to appeal to the Adult Swim stoner crowd? That I think there definitely is probably some crossover between that audience and the traditional Star Trek audience on who's watching Lower Decks.
I'm actually curious, at the risk of sending things off topic, how are the ratings? How are the general reviews? I realized I haven't actually looked into any of that besides talking to you and Dave, and I guess PJ now.
I from what I've seen, and it just could be because I'm kind of in a bubble now, but within the Star Trek fandom, most people seem to be reacting to the show pretty positively. Outside of Star Trek, the reviews are a little bit more mixed, but I think still skewed positive. It had a 67 on Rotten Tomatoes last time I looked. The thing that I hear a lot is that the show kind of feels unnecessarily tame, and it's not going to be as edgy or as far out there or as boundary pushing as something like Rick and Morty. So what's the point of it? But I think those people are kind of missing the point of it, which is like a return to that kind of warm-hearted Star Trek flavor that translates very well into a kind of a occasionally wholesome sitcom type thing. So.
All right, cool. I realized I was like, I don't know what everyone thinks of this show. It could be, I haven't actually had a chance to watch any reviews outside of the ones I've had with you guys.
Do you think after all this, like he's getting the crap kicked out of him again? He's probably not going to have no balls by the end of the season.
He just keeps getting like hitting the balls.
They can wave a light over that. It's fine.
Yeah, I just want the writers to go a little bit more easy on him in future episodes. I don't want to see him get beat up all the time.
Well, I think there's going to be an arc with Boimler, and I think he's going to slowly get less and less pathetic. And this episode actually might be like a first step of him improving over where he was last week.
I will say there's a certain amount of one of the reasons I don't like Big Bang Theory is that Sheldon comes up with good ideas and makes good calls, but the show never seemed to reward him for it. At least the episodes I watched, it was always the only thing they would acknowledge was when Sheldon made mistakes and looked stupid. Then they would shine a light on it. But when he made the right call, everyone would look slightly embarrassed and then move on to the next joke. And I was like, it always focuses on his mistakes and never on his triumphs. And I kind of feel like, is that where we're going with Boimler too? Because I don't know if I'm going to enjoy that. But this episode was a little more complicated than that. So,
and this is where we get the payoff of Mariner swiping the wallet. So here she can end the fight, save Boimler's ass by like buying a round for everyone, which was these people are very reactionary. They're like, oh my God, what's going on? Let's punch everybody. Let's just start punching everybody. And then they're like, oh, sure, I want a drink. Yeah, that's awesome. Yay!
And this is a world with replicators too. So, yeah, but they literally can have their drinks for free if they want.
It's a very Star Warsy kind of bar.
Yeah. It definitely has like those cantina vibes. And then we get like sad sack Boimler.
I did laugh at his, and then I'll be dead. And by the time they rescue me and I'll be dead, then they'll just be looking at my shaky cam recording log entries to figure out what happened. And
that made me laugh too.
That does sound exactly like how so many Star Trek episodes go.
Yeah, like more than just Star Trek. Like a lot of stuff uses that trope of like the camera footage left behind. Like it's in Aliens, right? Isn't that in Aliens?
I don't know. I don't
know. No, I'm thinking of not Alien. Halo, the first Halo game. You find some shaky cam footage like that. But this is kind of where Mariner kind of gets serious about wanting to do more to help Boimler, because he has this breakdown and he says he's ready to quit Starfleet.
Yeah. And I mean,
I don't blame him.
Well, yeah, and he keeps having bad days, and then she keeps rubbing it in as hard as she can every chance she gets, and she keeps coming off covered in roses every time she does anything. So I can see how this might crush a person's soul if this is what every day with Mariner is like.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if they're gonna like keep this in mind, that she has like this moment with him, and they're gonna like tone that back where she kind of stops giving him as much shit in future episodes, or if they're just gonna kind of maintain the status quo going forward.
I mean, even in this episode, we see another direction of that, as we're going to find out. So, it's not just she gives him shit. She does realize maybe she's gone too far. So
she is very protective of him, and that's probably one of the main reasons, besides the fact that she wants to meet the Klingon. But the main reason why she goes on this mission, because she knows he's probably going to get his ass handed to him if anything goes wrong. But she, at the same time, in 2 episodes, she keeps calling him an idiot, a dummy, what's wrong with you, this and that. And now this moment happens, and he kind of like goes back on the ship and brags about how stupid she is, which I didn't find worked for me, but still, she's trying to do something nice for him, and I hope this begins an arc of like genuine friendship between them, as opposed to this like constant antagonistic back and forth odd couple stuff.
Yeah, I agree.
Is it weird to y'all that his pants are down when he's like in this alley? Like I think he was trying to get to, like the shrapnel on his leg, but it's like why are his pants off in every episode so far?
It might just be a running gag. I mean, it's just kind of have a see every episode. Boimler has to be partially unclothed. So, but yeah, I was like, I'm kind of with you. I can see why you're throwing that comm badge. I don't think it's Starfleet you really have the problem with. I think it's Mariner that you have the problem with. But I can totally see how at that point you can't tell the difference between those two ideas. So,
but I think in the end he's going to need Mariner, and I think Mariner might need Boimler because as we saw earlier in this episode, when Boimler's bookishness and like doing his homework and stuff, it paid off when he was aware of the ion field, and like you were saying, like if they had listened to him, none of this would have happened. So I think like the ideal Starfleet officer is like some type of alchemy between Mariner and Boimler. It's probably like 60, 70, 80% Mariner, and then like the rest is Boimler. But they're gonna have to like meet in the middle somewhere. I think they're gonna improve each other as things continue.
Yeah,
or that's what I hope to see.
I'll also say Boimler came off as a bit cowardly in the previous episode. This one, he didn't feel like they didn't feel like they needed to push the cowardly thing. He runs in and tries to stave that Andorian from the fight that's getting beaten up. You know, there are moments where he tries to stand up. It never goes well for him, but I did like a Boimler he's got so many personality flaws. We don't have to add cowardice on top of them. There's plenty to work with as there is.
Yeah, he has those Starfleet values.
Yeah.
But this is where we get the scheme from Mariner to make him feel better by letting him be the hero. And this is a little weird with the Ferengi that Boimler would actually think Mariner is too dumb to like know a Ferengi from a Bolian.
Well, to your casual viewer who doesn't actually know what a Bolian is, that might make more sense. But yeah, for a deep dive Star Trek fan, that does seem like an absurd thing. Though he does seem to be equally surprised. He's actually like, "What the hell? How can you not tell?" You know. So it's not like his reaction is just as much disbelief as ours.
You know what made it? What would have made it work? I think would be if you had him like hooded up, like if he had like a robe and a hood over his head, and you could still kind of tell he's like a very Ferengi shaped person. Like it looked like he had like these big ears under his hood. That's obviously a Ferengi. Like, are you sure? I don't think he is. I think we should trust him. But I was actually talking to Dave yesterday about this a little bit, and I think he might have had a problem with like Boimler's big victory being like just something like given to him out of pity from Mariner. But to be fair, like if this was like a real scenario, like Boimler would have had it under control. I mean, like he pulls the phaser out on his own. As soon as like that Ferengi knife comes out, like he grabs Mariner's phaser. She actually like does this thing where like she steps close to him so he could like reach it and grab it off of her hip. But he like disarms the Ferengi, and you know, like he stepped up and was doing his job, doing his duty.
Yeah, I mean, the first time I saw it, I figured there's no way Mariner doesn't know what a Ferengi looks like. So I assumed she was improvising a win for Boimler. I did not assume that the Ferengi was in on it the first time I saw the episode. I figured she just said, "Hey, you know, I'm pretty sure Boimler can handle this Ferengi. I'm going to play stupid so that Boimler gets a win."
I think that would have been smarter if they had just done it as that, and not added that she prearranged this.
Yeah. There's definitely, I would tend to agree. Yeah. It certainly changes the whole nature of their relationship because of the way they chose to do it versus the way we just suggested they could have done it.
The funniest things here, though, to me, was the Ferengi saying, like, "Give me your profit." Weird to say, and also like the way that Boimler tries to like shoo him off like an animal, where he's like, "Go on, get out of here!" Like he's like a raccoon in the trash can or something.
Yeah, I did at first. Looking back, the Ferengi leaning really heavily into Ferengi stereotypes actually could just be seen as an act that he's giving Boimler what Boimler expects. So I was like, well, I can't really object to that. And most Ferengis are pretty stereotyped. So,
and the fact that the real guy is like a very sophisticated man with a monocle is going to take his wife to Ryza, and
yes,
he's totally the opposite of that stereotype. I don't like the fact that Boimler is so prejudiced against Ferengis. It's like, Ferengi.
DS9 gave us 7 seasons of everyone being like, I can't trust those disgusting little trolls.
Yeah, as I was saying earlier, the way Star Trek treats other aliens is not the way we treat other races necessarily. So,
yeah, maybe it's something they should be like a little bit more cautious with writing, but it is a very efficient way of communicating specific information to an audience.
Yeah. And Boimler's the sort of guy who would make that mistake. He actually goes for the stereotypes. That's what he believes in, is the stereotypes. So he is exactly the sort of person who probably would see all Ferengi as being threatening and conniving.
Because he doesn't have any experience. It's all just like whatever he's read about, and that's all he knows.
Yes, exactly.
No firsthand knowledge. He's got to get out there and learn. I don't see how the shuttlecraft was parked at that Federation embassy long enough to accumulate all those park tickets. I can only assume that drunken Corinne had like gone to like every illegal place to park on the Starbase and just like racked up all these tickets before finally going to the Federation embassy.
Headcanon accepted.
There, I like that as stupid and drunk as he is, like he still like was able to like aim himself in the right direction. Like he tried to get there on time.
Yes.
And then I think I laughed out loud when he's dropped off in front of the Federation embassy and he's puking up blood wine, which looks disgusting because it still looks like puke. And it made me think of earlier in the episode when Mariners just have to go blood pee some blood wine. And he's like, I need another drink. Fetch me my drinking horn or whatever. That's Starfleet security officer. And she's just like not having it.
Yeah, it was nice. Like, okay, now he can be somebody else's problem.
But yeah, I have a theory to why this particular Klingon was chosen to be the ambassador for them.
Okay.
But I'll save that until later. But yeah, we get the shuttle ride back to the ship, and Mariner, yeah, she's totally like playing along with this. She's like, "Oh, you're not gonna tell anyone about this, will you?"
Yeah.
And then hard cut to Boimler telling everyone about like, "You wouldn't believe who was so dumb on the planet.
Yeah.
Good thing you saved her."
And the first time I watched it, I was like, Boimler, I expected more of you. But then the second time I was like, no, she totally deserves this. You should absolutely rub her nose in this. It is absolutely what she deserves. So even if it's not really, you're not really comfortable doing it, you should still do it just because of the way she treats you all the time.
She's kind of owning up to that in the sequence. Like she's kind of like, yeah, maybe I have been kind of a jerk to this guy.
I wasn't sure how to take that. Is she still acting, or is she actually annoyed that he didn't keep it a secret?
She's acting.
Yeah, she's acting because she gives him a look when she leaves the bar. But for me particularly, I love stories about characters that they're willing, like they'll take the blame, or they'll be the bad guy, or they'll be like, oh yeah, I'll just like look like I wasn't the cool one who had my shit together and let someone else take the credit if it's the right thing to do. For whatever reason, those types of stories always like really resonate with me. And I love characters. Another thing I love is characters who they don't like go out of their way to like flex their nuts and look like the big badass and take credit. They're like, there's a sequence in
That's not Mariner, though. She refers to herself as awesome multiple times.
But she does that. She does that like jokingly. Like it's very different. It's very different. And I think there's a very clear comparison between like her doing that and the way like Boimler tries to like be all hoity-toity, be like, oh, look at me, look at the assignment I got and stuff. Like there's like this moment in Star Trek Discovery season 1 when Ash Tyler and Captain Lorca are on like that Klingon shooting range, and Tyler doesn't brag about like how many kills he got to Lorca, and then like Lorca looks at that screen and he's like, whoa, like you totally kicked my ass in there. And like, but I like characters like that where they're like, they don't feel the need to like brag about shit like that, because if you're actually a badass at something, anyone paying attention is going to figure that out, you know?
Yeah. Another thing I noticed in this episode, Mariner is pretty nice to basically everyone except Boimler. It's not that she's always talking crap about everybody. It's really just Boimler she picks on. She's nice to the Klingon. She's nice to the Klingon selling the gawk, and even like you know rolls over and bares her neck or whatever to like, yeah, we're gonna go grovel in front of the general, and she's nice. She can be nice to people, and she is nice to people. Except for Boimler, where she literally got him to the point where he was throwing his comm badge away at one point because she was just riding him all the time. And I was like, wow, what's up with that? Why him of all the people, the goofy people on this ship? It's not like Rutherford and the others aren't a little weird. I
have a theory about why she's riding him all the time. Because she wants to ride him all the time.
No, I don't want any like romantic connection.
No, they're gonna get into an argument. They're gonna be like, blah 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 blah. Then,
so tropey. I want there to just be like a normal platonic relationship between like, but they ruined the X-Files with that shit. And I'm still mad about it. Like 20 years.
Well, yeah, I hadn't considered romance because I have trouble imagining Mariner would ever actually be attracted to someone like Boimler. But I do wonder why is she got it out for him like that?
Well, I think that she just like they're so different personalities. They've worked together for a year. I think he's just like really annoyed her, and it's just after last week when he chose not to turn her into the captain. To her secret captain mom, that she decided like, you know what, this guy is all right. She actually says that. She's like, yeah, I thought you were just like this worker drone weasel, but there's actually some good in you, and I'm gonna make you a better Starfleet officer.
She says it in the most insulting way possible, though.
Remember in the beginning of the episode, she talks about how she likes getting into arguments because it makes her, and then she's cut off. I suppose she's gonna say it makes her hot. To get under the skin of male officers, so maybe she's got like a kinky kind of.
So she's arguing. She's confrontational with Boimler out of like some form of foreplay. I hope that's
some sort of underlying lust and desire.
But to me, like I really like this juxtaposition of Boimler. He is being really like boastful here to a kind of like an annoying level, but it's good for him like build up his confidence. But we see like, yeah, like when Mariner does this, she does it like in kind of like a very flippant, jokey way. And I think that's something you see more in like insecure people like Boimler, is they're constantly trying to like put on that bravado, like he's doing like at the very beginning when he's like, you know, guess who got this assignment, or like he's walking on the shuttle bay with his dress uniform on. And I love that they brought back the TNG style dress uniform.
Oh yes,
it makes it look like even more of a dork wearing that. Yeah. Just like the openings of both these episodes were my least favorite parts last week and this week. These final moments in the bar were my favorite moments. I really loved that moment in the first episode where Mariner embraces Boimler and says that she self-appoints herself to be his mentor. in kind of an obnoxious way, but I think like for her, very like very nice, compassionate kind of thing to do for someone. And here, when like this look that she gives him when she's like walking out of the bar, she sees him like laughing and having a good time. You know, he's not that sad sack crying in the alley anymore. He's learned to be like a little bit more confident. He's reminded that he wants to be in Starfleet, and she just gives him this look like, I got your back, bro. I like that. That was my favorite part of the episode, next to the Andorian showing up.
It's more like, I got your back, dummy. Or, I got your back, idiot. That's the way she talks to him. No, she's probably going to ease up on him, I think. Yeah, I think she's starting to soften up. Hopefully.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
We're gonna like, remember how different O'Brien and Bashir were in early Deep Space Nine compared to the end of the show? Where he's like, I love my wife, but I like you more. Like, that's very different than like season 1, season 2 O'Brien.
People were very annoyed with Bashir in the early seasons of DS9. It's like they didn't want to be around him for too long.
Yeah. I picked up from the very first episode that he was supposed to be annoying because Kira calls him on it. But I was like, yeah, that's an odd choice.
And similarly, I guess, but also like very different. Boimler is supposed to be annoying.
Yeah. I think one thing that struck me is the way they play this game, where she rags on him all the time, and then eventually she lets him have a win, and then he rags on her. Maybe that is, justice, that he gets his chance to make her look like a fool in front of everyone. But this is not going to. I don't see how this is going to help their relationship. It's just feeding that this is how we interact. We were constantly aggressively trying to pick each other apart all the time, and I'm like, I don't know if that's building a healthy relationship between them, even if it is definitely moving things in some direction. He's
I don't know. Spock and Dr. McCoy, they had a very like you might even say unhealthy, working relationship, very like confrontational back and forth thing. But I think at the end of the day, like they really like respected each other and were valued friends of one another. Even like way back in season 2 of the original series in the mock time when Sarah, it was my honor.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't sense that deep friendship between the two of them. Especially, I don't think Boimler sees any sort of friendship with Mariner. He might envy her abilities and skills, but I don't think he actually sees a connection between the two of them other than adversarial. And maybe she sees some other connection between the two of them, but she's clearly keeping it on the down low.
But I think we're going to get there. And I don't want them to rush it. I want it to be a slow burn.
Well, that's, I guess, as far as the way this unfolds at the end, my big thought, especially the second time I went through, was she realizes at some point when he's throwing the comm badge away that she's pushed him too far, and that she's been a little more of a jerk than she probably intended to be, and that she has to fix this thing she messed up. She could just say, you know what, you were right. We shouldn't have stopped off to get Gok. And I should have read up on the reports about how you can't use the communicators down here on the planet. You were right. I was wrong. And I think that would have had the same effect. But instead, she sets up this whole elaborate plot with her Ferengi friend to give him an up. And it feels to me like the reason she does it that way, the big complicated way, is so that she never has to admit she did anything wrong. She still wins. Privately, she's sitting in her bunk saying, I still won everything. She never has to actually apologize for something she really screwed up on. Instead, she makes a fake screw up that she fake apologizes for just so that she doesn't have to make a real apology. And I was like, that is messed up. And if they're doing that deliberately, if they're setting up a character who actually has this problem where she can't ever admit that she's made a mistake on that level, at least not to someone like Boimler, then actually I'm really interested in where this story is going. If that's deliberate and we're really going to explore why she's like that and what made her to the point where she would do this incredibly elaborate manipulation with the Ferengi just to avoid having to really apologize for something, then I'm actually really interested in where the show is going. I don't know if that's what we're going to get or if it's just bad writing. So we'll see.
Like she admitted herself, she's very complicated.
Yes.
Yes. And I think she is. I think we are going to find some big things in her backstory like we don't know about that will hopefully explain a lot. That will be intended to explain a lot. But yeah, only time will tell. Brian, I had not thought about it that much, but I think you very well might be onto something.
I hope so, because I'll be way more invested in the show if it looks like that's where we're going, and that she's kind of got to get over herself a bit as part of her growing, and that would make things a lot more interesting if they both have big personality issues they need to overcome.
Well, speaking of the bar, that's also where we get the resolution of the B story between Rutherford and Tendi. So do y'all want to switch over to those two ensigns and talk about the stuff that they get into on the Cerritos while Boimler and Mariner on the away mission?
Sure, let's transfer departments.
Rutherford and Tendi, I guess, might be developing some type of romance, or maybe they're just friends, or maybe like they're both kind of unsure. It's not really specified.
No, they both really like each other. You can totally tell.
Yeah, but
they're not hiding it at all. I mean,
have they articulated that to one another though? Like, have they like established that?
Last week he was Rutherford was dating somebody else who was really into him, and it just seemed to be that he was unaware of that due to a malfunction in his cyborg unit. So it does seem like a bit of a jump.
Well, in the last episode, he does have a conversation with Tendi at the end where he tells her why he's not going to see this girl anymore, and she has that weird reaction like, "What? It did?" And she agrees with him, and it's like, "Oh." And that, I think that was the spark that. But she really wants him to watch the Pulsar with her.
Yes.
With her,
and he really
wants to do it. Yeah. So.
Because he had apparently been in there for a week, which if I was a chief engineer and I had a guy serving under me who's like, yeah, I'll go in the Jeffrey tubes for a week and realign all the what was it, the power relays, EMS,
EPS was the
EPS. Yeah, he's gonna realign all the EPS conduits or whatever by hand.
Yeah,
like, no, you're crazy. You can't go in there for an entire week. But
I would call the counselor in a real universe. In a cartoon universe, I'd probably just promote him. So, and it feels, I guess, kind of to sort of skip to the end. It seems like the engineer likes him enough. He could just say, "Hey, could I have a few hours off in the middle of my duty shift on this day?" And the chief engineer would say, "Sure, you earned it after spending a week in the Jeffries tubes."
But I think he didn't want I don't know. Maybe he didn't want someone else to take his spot. It is silly because you think, it would be easier just like ask for the morning off instead of I gotta like change careers, but
that's just an excuse to have him go through the different training.
Sure.
Yeah,
which was
it did feel kind of like and here's how we explain Starfleet to the new viewers sequence, which I thought was kind of nice.
Yeah. For the stoners who like Adult Swim who are joining us, Rick and Morty. Let us explain Starfleet to you. This is engineering. This is the engineering set. What did you all think of seeing engineering, by the way? That massive warp core.
Yeah, that was the warp core had gotten complete. Everything else is Berman era, but that warp core had been completely discovered. We have a huge budget and we're gonna use it. God damn it.
Yeah, well, animation, it's only limited to what the artist can draw.
I think engineering looks really good. I think that whole room looks like really nice.
Yeah,
really good to look at.
Now that the direction, the EPS power lines, those red lines that come off either side of the warp core, they're headed up at an angle, which seems odd, even if we're in that little secondary hole with the deflector dish, if that's where engineering is. I would still expect them to be going out horizontally, not up. But I guess engineering must be down at the bottom of that secondary hole deflector dish assembly, so that the power supply has to go up to get to the warp nacelles, I guess. Sorry, nerding out.
It makes sense.
The warp core!
Brian, is that your favorite part of the ship, like Boimler?
I certainly, from a design point of view, it's the most interesting because everything else just looks like regular Berman Trek. But the warp core is like, that's really striking, new, and different. So it's kind of as far as something new to look at in this cartoon, it's my favorite part of the ship.
What do y'all think of the gag of trying to tell the chief engineer, Lieutenant Commander Billups, that he wants to quit, and then that whole like, what did you just say? Oh, yeah, sure, no problem. Go ahead and quit. Yeah. You should move on if you want to do something else.
I loved that because I complained last time that the crew seems mean, and this is firmly established. No, our crew is not mean. Our crew is nice and supportive and Starfleet and Federation-y and completely not what you would expect in this sort of cartoon. That's not how you would expect it to go in this sort of stylized cartoon environment. And instead, they pull the rug out from under us and give us what we weren't expecting, but what makes sense if you've actually been paying attention to Star Trek. So I really did like that everyone's fine with him jumping from department to department to department. Well, I guess the doctor seemed a little meh on the whole thing, but that's just her.
Yeah, I love Paul Scheer, who does the voice of the chief engineer. I don't know if you know who he is. He's from The League. And
I watched that show, like the first season. That was a while. That was like 10 years ago, but
yeah, he's a great voice actor as well.
Yeah, I like this chief engineer because he just seems kind of like what
Jeff
you would
Foxworthy.
expect of like a typical. Well, he does look like Jeff Foxworthy, but yeah, he just seems like kind of like the typical Starfleet guy. Like, the first thing that we have Ensign Rutherford try out is command with Commander Ransom, and they do kind of Kobayashi Maru type simulations. Well, actually, these don't seem like they're supposed to be no-win scenarios. Shax is the one later with the no-win scenario, but like with Rutherford in command, they become no-win scenarios really quick.
Yeah, this is by far the best part of the show so far. Like this whole scene.
It's one of the funniest things they've done.
Yeah.
I did laugh hard at all the children we've ejected all the children into space.
The first time he does it, it's a temporal anomaly, and it somehow destroys the ship and wipes out 105% of the crew. It's 105% casualties, which
I assume it.
Well, you go ahead with your assumption.
I assume it goes back. The wave goes back in time and kills some people in the past before the ship even comes there. There's an alternate timeline or an alternate timeline where it blew up so bad it actually damaged an alternate timeline version of the ship. So.
It's funny because they're like, we're getting pulled into a temporal anomaly. What should we do, Captain? And he's like, maintain course.
That's what you should not do. He tells him that he should have done the Janeway protocol.
Yeah.
So then he turns it on to easy mode. He's like, okay, he couldn't handle the temporal anomaly. Let's just do a little asteroids in front of the ship.
Yeah.
And he's like, Janeway protocol. And there's the same thing, like blood everywhere. They're like, oh my God, the children.
Yeah, it's like the way it's played is so brilliant because it's like, sir, we're headed straight for an asteroid. Should we just move out of the way? And he's like, Janeway protocol. Instantly, everybody has blood on their face. They're like, decade is gone. The kindergartners are gone. Oh, now the pre-K is gone. All the children have been sucked out into space.
Like that protocol does to the children what Janeway did to Tuvix.
I do. So, question. That was a simulation of the Cerritos. How do you say the ship's name?
Cerritos.
Cerritos. So it's a simulation of the Cerritos, right?
Uh-huh.
So there are kids and families on board this ship. That is now more or less
unless there are in like the simulation, so that you could like have that as like, well, what would you do if you had kids on board or something?
Yeah, but he didn't
It is
react
weird to me.
oddly. Yeah, he didn't comment, why do we have kids on board or anything like that. So
Yeah, it is
certainly
weird to me that some people have their families on board, but these ensigns sleep in a hallway.
yeah.
Weird.
Yeah. I don't get it. I still don't like the hallway thing. I still don't.
But each department that Rutherford goes to, he does like a little bit better than the last one. Like when he goes to sick bay, he's like kind of good at the medical stuff. Kind of like reminded me of Chet Reno in Discovery, who like kind of treated medicine as a form of like engineering.
Yeah.
But then when it comes like the bedside manner, he did not have very good skills. Where he had that guy freaked out, and that made me laugh too. Like he like had his heart rate up too high, and it's like, oh, you have like a 17% chance to live. Well, jumped up to 20. You really need to calm down.
He's like, think of something calming, like the
warp core.
The warp core. He's like, I got burned in the warp core. He goes, oh my god, those are plasma burns. How are you not dead yet?
that lithium burns. He's like,
lithium burns.
Yeah, you should be dead, man.
Yeah.
But this gave Tendi a little opportunity to shine. That's what I like. Like these people are ensigns. I know like Boimler is kind of a nincompoop, but for the most part, I like to show these people at being good at what they do. And then like Tendi's able to like come over there and like calm the guy down until he's like, that robot said I was gonna die.
Yeah. And she's very good at it too, perhaps unrealistically so, but it did it. I mean, I guess the question I had is, why isn't he getting into physics or astrophysics or something where you don't necessarily have to be a great people person?
Yeah.
And there is all this, extra crunchy science stuff that he's apparently able to just load up, like Keanu Reeves. I know Kung Fu, he's like, oh, I know.
Load it in the Vulcan implant.
Yeah.
I would have liked him like doing like some other like science stuff other than medical. Like I would have liked to see him like in like the, I don't know, like their astrophysics lab or something like that.
Yeah,
but
or geology or something.
Oh yeah. You only have like 22 minutes though, and I guess they are trying to show like the department heads. So they do not have an established science officer on the ship.
Yes. We are still suffering from the curse of Berman era doesn't like chief science officers, all because blue didn't go with Data's eyes. I still find it annoying that we had to put up with no chief science officers in all of TNG and in all of Voyager just because of that uniform decision.
Well, speaking of uniforms, we next get Rutherford back in the gold because he's going to try out for security. And we have Shax has the hilariously named training program Smorgasbord. That's what I'm saying. This one had more funny jokes. Like there were more laughable moments in this episode than last week, I think.
What do you think this scene is directly referencing? It's a recent science fiction movie.
Oh.
Well, I have not seen Upgrade, but I know that
I put out a GIF on Twitter of there's one shot where Rutherford is getting up off the floor and then hitting the guy, and the same thing with the scene in Upgrade where he's like getting up off. He's kind of like just. But yeah, I think it's inspired slightly by that. I'm not saying like they're ripping it off or anything. I'm just saying that one particular shot is inspired by that movie.
Yeah, everyone go check out PJ on Twitter at BoatWreck and see what you think of that. But it was fun to see Borg. Like a lot of these things that we haven't gotten a lot of. And I know we had like a ton of Borg stuff in Picard season 1, but generally with the last few years with Star Trek, there haven't been Borg and like Discovery or Kelvin or anything.
He's ripping out the eyeball.
Yep.
That's Kurtzman Trek for you. No,
yeah,
I don't mind it here. I really don't.
It was like, I definitely thought, I'm watching Picard again. Here goes an eyeball ripping.
Yeah, which is all over again.
Yeah, which is now a trope in Star Trek, eyeball ripping out of cyborg cybernetic things is now a trope, apparently.
You know what would have been funny if Rutherford, right before he says it, right before he rips out the eyeball, he says, "Where's your cortical node, buddy?" And he rips it out. But then he wouldn't be. It wouldn't make sense for him to reference something that happens 20 years later.
Do y'all think that the that Vulcan implant that might have been giving him the Sus Mana, the Vulcan martial arts that was established in Enterprise to give to Paul, and then they never did anything badass with it? She just had it in like that one episode, Marauders, where they fought the Klingons, and I was like, oh, this is cool. We could have her be like a Klingon martial artist. That'll kind of make her like unique. But they just never did it again.
Berman knows. Berman can fight in that style.
Well, Hoshi eventually found that martial arts after T'Pol lost it.
Yes, but that is a little problematic to make like your Asian character like really great at martial arts.
Just a little.
I still loved season 4 of Enterprise giving everyone something to do and making these dull characters actually be like really interesting and like, oh, these actors are actually great. And they should have been writing the show like this all along, and oh no, now it's canceled.
Yes.
That's another podcast for another day.
It was still very clearly they were trying to fix the character. It maybe wasn't the ideal fix, but there was definitely an attempt to fix the character, and I appreciated that.
If after this martial arts sequence here that we get in Lower Decks, that by the way, this is the second time like the show has done like a little bit of action. So they did that. They had the zombie stuff last week. So I like that they are putting like little bits of action here and there. A lot of people say like Star Trek can't do action. I disagree. I'm a big DS9 and TOS fan, and both those shows had a ton of action. It's just you have to find the right application for it. You can't like build a story around the action like an action movie, but yeah, sometimes Kirk needs to do the double fist punch and knock somebody out. But we get the bear pack with the security team, and it's the same gag again. And here I thought Shax is going to react differently. I was like, oh, this big tough guy, he's going to get mad. He's like, what are you thinking about that Jeffries tube, son? You got to be in the bear pack. But he's like, oh, no, you got to be true to yourself, buddy.
Yeah, I did love Bleed's black and yellow.
It's like a Pittsburgh Steelers thing.
Yeah.
Black and yellow, black and yellow. And then when he's like, Bears.
Yeah, no, I appreciated the fact that the crew appears to be quite supportive of people and helpful, and
that's what I'm saying. Like, we don't get that. Like, I know, like in Discovery, like they'll have like Burnham is trying to be supportive of Tilly, or like Saru, this guy that she initially didn't like, but now she really cares about him. She's sad he's gonna die, and they try to have like these moments of like affection between the characters and stuff. Yeah. But sometimes it comes off as a little stilted and unearned, and those moments are so far and few between that seeing something like this, it's just there's such a void for that I think this is a very appropriate show to put up in the lineup of all the Star Trek content we're getting.
Yeah, no, I do like that. It does throw Mariner even more into sharp relief, but yes.
But I think that like she even like works into it. Like we see her in her own way, trying to help Boimler. You pointed out how that might not be like the most ethical way to go about helping someone, but to me it fit. It worked. Like none of it was jarring.
No, she seems like the sort of person who would rather set up this elaborate charade rather than just apologize. But yeah, it fit her character.
The B story concludes with like Rutherford confessing to Tindy. He's like, look, I tried to get another department. I can't do it. I got to be in engineering. And she's like, oh, that's fine. I can just watch the pulsar on my pad next to you. And we get that sweet moment of the two of them together in the Jeffries tube. Or I thought it was sweet. What do y'all think about it, though?
I thought it was cute, and I like that she's more interested in hanging out with him than she is at watching the pulsar in more directly out of viewport, I guess. So that was kind of sweet. The fact that he wasn't actually paying any attention to the pulsar had me feeling like, yeah, this is never going to work in the long run. this is going to last a few weeks, and then it's going to be over.
But
they'll probably have fun for those few weeks, so that's all that matters.
I'm not sure if the idea here that like he's just like not that into girls or not that into her, or like if he's supposed to be like maybe he's like a little asexual or something like that, or
what are you talking about?
And after the first episode, we also have to ask repeatedly, anytime Rutherford does something weird, is that because the implant is malfunctioning, or is that an actual statement of who he is as a person? So
it's just like he seemed to really like her at the very beginning. If he's going to like try to like leave his beloved warp core and go find another job, but then here he's just kind of like ignoring her. So I wasn't really sure how to read it, but it still came off as sweet to me.
I don't read it that way. I think them being on this little date and her looking at the pulsar on the little view pad and him just like looking at the electronics like very lovingly, but they're back to back and they're touching and it's very sweet. Now the fact that he did try and rearrange his whole life just to do this with her, and by the end she's like, you know what, I can sacrifice something by just watching it on a pad, just as long as I'm with you. And she doesn't even care that he doesn't want to look at it with her. She just wants to be with somebody. And I think there's a genuine affection, and they're going to get married, and they're going to have kids. And
what are their kids going to be named? You got names picked out, PJ? No, I agree with you. I like that. I like your read of it. I like that interpretation.
Jules and Vern.
I'm gonna go with fuck you. Say no Back to the Future.
I will say, looking at the screen capture you've got up there, that is a big ass Jeffries tube.
Yeah, what had to be for like these two people to like snuggle up like that. But that is something that I guess there is something that needs to be said about that. It's like that is probably a healthy thing, in your relationship, that obviously you need some common ground, but it's good to let the other person do their thing and you do your thing. Y'all don't have to constantly be doing like the same thing together all the time. Like someone wants to look at the pulsar while you play around with your panel on the Jeffries tube.
I will say Tendi is probably the only person who can say to some guy who's interested in her, oh, well, I'll just come into the Jeffries tube and watch the pulsar on my pad. And you don't think immediately, oh, something else is going to be happening in that Jeffries tube. No, not with Tendi. Tendi, you can actually, Tendi too. She's completely honest. You don't get the idea that there's any sort of ulterior, she says she's going to come in the Jeffries tube to watch the pulsar on the pad. She means that's exactly what she's going to do. It's not a euphemism. And so I thought that was kind of sweet.
Well, I have a bunch of Gorn eggs to go over before we run out of time, because there are a lot of things snuck into this episode. The Gorn eggs being our Easter eggs, in jokes, and continuity connections that I find in the episode. Do either of you have any final thoughts on Envoys that you'd like to get out before I move on to the Gorn eggs?
No, I just really like the Rutherford stuff.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Brian,
I like this episode was a significant improvement over the last one, and if we're going to do something complex with the characters and their psychological issues, then I'm totally down for that.
Right on. And I'm curious to see now, Brian, after you've suggested some things that had not occurred to me, I'm very curious to see if it plays out like that. So I will be eagerly watching to see how it unfolds. And I'm just going to go ahead and get started on these Gorn eggs, because like I said, there are a lot. So we're going to start off with the transdimensional energy being that appeared in the opening of the episode. Star Trek has kind of a long-standing tradition of like these non-corporeal life forms, going all the way back to Charlie X, one of the very first episodes of the original series. Back then, it was just like this green glowy head that appeared on the bridge of the ship. But they had several. There is the glowy orb in Day of the Dove that came onto the Enterprise, and the life form that we see in Lower Decks. It looks most like the thing Brian mentioned earlier, and that was the blue ball of light in the Child, which does impregnate Troy in kind of a creepy way. Next, Gornag, we have Captain Freeman with a very small appearance in this episode. We only see her here in the opening, where she says that she needs a catchphrase basically to say whenever the ship goes into warp, and she tries it's warp time. So hashtag it's warp time, I guess. This is referring to Captain Picard saying engage. Captain Pike says hit it or punch it, depending on what timeline you're in. I think Freeman wants to go with it's warp time. Ensign Boimler mentions an Ensign Castro who had served on board the Enterprise. At this time in the year 2380, that would still be the Enterprise E, which we can assume would be under the command of Picard, although Riker, Troy, and Data are all not on board the ship, and Worf, whatever the hell is going on with him, may or may not be there, depending on what you believe Worf's status is in Star Trek Nemesis.
He's on Kronos, and anyone who says otherwise is wrong.
Well, the novels are wrong then, but Star Trek Online is correct. In the shuttle, when they're waiting on Corinne, Mariner snoozes off, and she's dreaming something about buried alive, marooned for all eternity. I think that's meant to be an obvious reference to the Wrath of Khan.
I forgot to mention, I laughed my ass off at that.
I thought that was a little too easy. That's a little too on the nose, but this is my favorite Gornag because this is so stupid. But or the way I'm presenting it is stupid. When Corinne shows up and he has an eye patch, that is an Easter egg to Lower Decks Episode 1, Second Contact, when Mariner says that she got her bat left from a guy with an eye patch. I like that they've already referenced themselves 2 episodes in. Also, there is another drunk Klingon diplomat with General Cord that we saw in Nimbus 3 and Star Trek 5. So I think maybe like the Klingon drunks that aren't good for anything else, they get the unglorious job of being the ambassadors. We also see a Batleth, which was a very famous weapon established in the Next Generation. I think it first appeared in the episode Reunion, as well as the Klingon knife, the Duck Tog. That goes back to Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock. The cups that Mariner and Corinne are drinking out of are the same blood wine cups that were established in Next Generation. I think the first time we see them is a matter of honor when Riker did the officer transfer onto the Klingon bird of prey. Gok is a...
Well, there were 2 cups, and one of them is the cup used in DS9, and one of them is the one from Next Gen. They
nice.
Each had different cups, if you look carefully. So,
yeah, Brian, right, they are different.
But the fatter one that the general has is the one that you usually see in DS9.
Cool. We also have Gok, which also I think was established in that same TNG episode I mentioned, A Matter of Honor. We already mentioned little Kronos. The starbase, I should say little Kronos, as in like the Klingon homeworld.
The aliens that you just had up on the screen, I just realized those are the guys from Insurrection.
Yeah, I get that on here too.
Oh, okay. All right.
But before I get into that, I just want to say that the starbase itself, it has kind of the same shaped tower thing that we see at Farpoint Station, an encounter at Farpoint. And we've seen like land-based star bases before multiple times. They did that in the DS9 episode Once More Into the Breach, where they have to attack a Dominion starbase, and also Starbase 11, which we saw multiple times in the original series. And Mariner mentions that she is blood bonded to Corinne. This could be similar to a Klingon blood oath, like the one that Dax, speaking of her similarities with Dax we mentioned earlier, Dax had a blood oath with Kang, Kor, and Koloth. We saw that in Deep Space Nine. Mariner says that they just need to get some Raktajino into Corinne. He'll be fine. Give him a little Klingon coffee. Raktajino being very popular on the Deep Space Nine station. Boimler mentions that they're in violation of the Khitomer Accords. We did see the Klingon Federation peace talks that took place in Star Trek 6 at Camp Khitomer, kind of the big famous establishment of no aggressions between the Empire and the Federation, kind of their first step in becoming allies. We talked about Boimler mentioning the power walking, like Section 31. And as Brian was just pointing out, also when the characters arrive at Little Kronos, we do see those weird, short, kind of cow-faced aliens that were established in Star Trek Insurrection. When we get to the innards of the Klingon district, the slums, the dirty part, there's one of my favorite Gorn eggs here, and that is a bird-like alien. Kind of looks like Big Bird.
Oh!
It ties directly into Star Trek, the animated series, where we had not one, but two Big Bird aliens like that. There was the one in, what is it, Yesteryear?
Yeah.
And they were called Auralians or Aurolians or something like that. And they look almost identical to the score that we see in Jihad, but they are slightly different in the face and like the eyebrows, but they're basically the exact same character model. It's really weird that they just didn't label them as the same species back at the animated series.
Honestly, they look like they look more similar than some Klingons do.
That's for damn sure. But speaking of Klingons, the Gawk lady at the little food stand, she is speaking a lot like the Duras sisters would talk with their prosthetic teeth. And she even had a little bit of the lisp that they had. And I thought that was a really cool callback, because there's no reason to do that with like a voice actor in a recording booth having to talk with those fake ass Klingon teeth. But honestly, it made her sound more Klingon. She whips out a Mek'leth, that's kind of like the half Batleth sword that was established in Deep Space Nine Way of the Warrior, and then was later used by Worf in First Contact. It turns out that Karen went to the Andorian District to get stronger L, so I assume he is drinking the Andorian L that we heard of in DS9, and we see a lot of it in Enterprise. Another really cool Gorn egg is we get mention of the Kalons, who are an alien species that were established in Star Trek, the Next Generation episode Half a Life. I think that was in season 4, aka the best Luwak's Anna Troy episode ever, where she falls in love with that scientist Tennyson. He's got to commit suicide at age 60.
Yeah, the episode that's not about any of the regulars at all.
It was a good episode.
It was just all guest stars.
It's probably Majel Barrett's best acting. Why is my camera messed up? What the hell's going on with my camera?
Okay to me. Yeah, but, anyway, yeah, that was an excellent episode. I'm not to say bad. It was a great episode.
Then in the background of the Klingon district, we see in some of the shops some more Klingon weapons. There's like this big spear thing that we saw in Next Generation. I don't know if it has a name. I've never heard it if it does. But there's also, this is really cool, some Klingon disruptors and some Klingon armor.
Oh, 1960s disruptors.
Yeah, they have the TOS era, the movies and TNG DS9 era disruptors.
That's the Kelvin.
They even have like a Kelvin one.
Yeah.
And there's also some old school Klingon armor. So that was really cool to see these very traditional Klingon designs.
Oh, nice.
I noticed there's no Discovery stuff in there, which make it that what you will. But yeah, the Klingon disruptor pistols first established in the original series, Errand of Mercy, and the Klingon armor first established in Star Trek: The Motion Picture. On the holodeck, Commander Ransom talks about command, like grabbing the hot joystick of command, or something like that. It sounds very weird and sexual, but he could be referencing the manual steering column, which was a really dumb thing, in my opinion, from Star Trek Insurrection, when Commander Riker piloted the Enterprise with what looked like the flight simulator joystick you used on PCs back in the 90s when they made that movie.
I did keep expecting somebody to say, but the con doesn't have any joysticks. It's all flat.
we get the appearance of a Nepian on that holodeck program, who I'm told was in the first episode. I must have missed him when I was looking for Gorn eggs last week. But yeah, he is a Nepian security officer, the same species as Lieutenant Quan from Eye of the Beholder. And of course, the Janeway Protocol, that is a reference to Captain, now at this point in time, Admiral Janeway, famous from Star Trek Voyager. In the Ryzen District, we get the Horgon statue and the Ryzens with like that little thing on their middle of their forehead, and the references to Jahamaran. So always cool. I actually saw a giant Horgon statue like that on the Star Trek cruise. And they appear like the Ryzens that we see in TNG and DS9. Lieutenant Shax shouts out by the prophets after he sees Rutherford take down all those Borg. Of course, that being a reference to the Bajoran prophets. The Andorians were founding members of the Federation, as was established in Star Trek Enterprise. My favorite Gorn egg, the Vendorian, and I love that it actually had the same shapeshift, special effect, and sound effect that was used in the animated series. Use that same type of like little sparkly glow and that same old school sound effect. So that was super cool. We see a Lurian in that Andorian bar, like Morn. Everybody loves Morn from DS9. We also see, this was a really weird deep cut, these Rockmen guys, that they look an awful lot like the Rockmen that were supposed to be in Star Trek V that were cut out of the movie.
Wow.
They have the same shaped mouth and the same like little red glowing eyes.
Wow.
And in that bar fight, there's also the Andorian ice knife, the Yushan Tor, that we see in Enterprise.
And that was invented by the role-playing game from that era.
Oh yeah, that's right. That was established in the role-playing game. You
one of the very few times something from the Star Trek role-playing game has made the leap onto screen. So,
and then my last two Gorn eggs, Vasquez rocks all over the place at the starbase. They walk past several rocks that resemble that shape of Vasquez rock. And the last one that I have is the Ferengi referred to Mariner and Boimler as humans, the weird Ferengi pronunciation of human, which we first heard in the Ferengi's first on-screen appearance, The Last Outpost. And that's it. Those are all the Gorn eggs that I discovered. Of course, if I missed anything, feel free to let me know, because we do like to share some feedback from time to time when we're doing our podcast. Though we're running a little late, so we're not going to have time for that now, because right now Starfleet Boy is streaming live. If you hop on over to his channel, you can check out Starfleet Boy After Dark, for those of you that are currently watching us live on YouTube. And of course, our podcasts are always available in an audio-only format as well. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts, so be sure to give us a listen if you want to enjoy the Tex-Trek podcast that way. And we'll be back live next Friday at 7:30 p.m. Central Time to discuss Star Trek Lower Decks Episode 3, Temporal Edict. I'm really looking forward to that. Because it sounds like it's going to be about time travel, and I'm all about the time travel in my Star Trek. I love the time travel stories. So we will go ahead and sign off. But as always, live long and prosper, y'all.
Listen to the Tex-Trek podcast through Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or at tex-trek.com. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/tex-trek, and follow Fatheree on Twitter at TXTrek. Please support us by liking our videos and subscribing to our channel on YouTube. Thank you and take care.